Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UCS Defiance, watching the stars drift past through the main screen. The ship moved slowly through space near the galaxy's edge, checking for problems along the border. It was a normal patrol, the kind he had done hundreds of times before. "Everything looks quiet out here, Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. She was young but good at her job, always watching the sensors for trouble. "No strange signals, no unknown ships." Jake nodded and walked over to look at her screen. The Defiance was not a big ship, but it was fast and strong. It carried a crew of 48 people, all human. They were part of the Galactic Coalition, a group of many different alien species that worked together to keep peace in the galaxy. "Captain, I'm getting some weird readings from the dark space beyond the rim," called Chief Engineer Rick Barnes from the back of the bridge. Rick was an old man who had fixed ships for 30 years. If he said something was weird, Jake listened. Jake moved to Rick's station and looked at the numbers on the screen. The readings showed massive amounts of energy coming from empty space, far beyond anything they had seen before. The energy patterns did not match any known technology from any of the Coalition species. "Could be a new star being born," Jake said, but he did not sound sure. "Or maybe some kind of space storm." "Maybe," Rick said, shaking his gray head. "But I've never seen readings like this. It's like something big is moving out there, something that doesn't follow normal rules." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had been a ship captain for 12 years, and he had learned to trust his feelings when something seemed wrong. "Keep watching those readings, Rick. Let me know if they change." Far away from the Defiance, on the huge space station called Nexus Station, Ambassador Lisa Hayes sat in a meeting with representatives from dozens of alien species. The station was as big as a city, floating in space near the center of the galaxy. It was where all the different species came together to talk and make decisions. Lisa was the only human in the room full of strange alien beings. There were the Zephyrians, who looked like living light, and the Corathans, who were tall and covered in tough scales like armor. The Deepsworn looked like giant fish that could breathe air, and many other species filled the Great Hall. "We have been hearing stories," said the Zephyrian speaker, its voice like music in the air. "Stories of shadow ships at the edge of our galaxy, ships that appear and disappear like ghosts." "Just stories," said the Corathan War Commander Thex, hitting his fist on the table. "My people are warriors. We do not fear ghost stories." But Lisa noticed that even Thex seemed nervous. The big alien kept looking around the room like he expected something bad to happen. Other species representatives were whispering to each other in worried voices. "Perhaps we should send scouts to investigate," Lisa suggested. "If there really is something out there, we should know about it." Before anyone could answer, the great doors of the hall burst open. A group of Corathan soldiers ran in, their armor damaged and their weapons broken. Behind them came War Commander Thex, but he looked nothing like the proud warrior who had been in the meeting just hours before. Thex was shaking. His scales, normally bright and colorful, had turned pale gray. His eyes were wide with fear, and he could barely stand up straight. "They come," he whispered, his voice cracking. "They come from the void between stars. Ships that eat light itself. Beings that make space itself sick." The hall fell silent. No one had ever seen a Corathan warrior show fear before. These were the people who fought giant space monsters for fun. If they were scared, something was very wrong. "What did you see?" Lisa asked, standing up from her chair. Thex looked at her with eyes full of terror. "We sent 3 fleets to the void sectors, beyond the rim where space ends. Only my ship came back. The others, they were not destroyed. They were unmade. Like they never existed at all." He reached into his armor and pulled out a small device, placing it on the table. "This recorded what we saw. But I warn you, some knowledge is too terrible to bear." The device projected a hologram into the air above the table. It showed space, but space that was wrong. Instead of black emptiness with stars, there were regions where reality seemed to bend and twist. Ships moved through this space, but they were not normal ships. They seemed to be made of shadow and hunger, and wherever they went, the stars went. Out. They do not destroy, Thex continued, his voice getting stronger but still full of fear. They consume. They eat the very rules that make the universe work. After they pass, up becomes down, fire burns cold, and time flows backward. Dr. Helen Carter, Earth's chief scientist studying alien life, watched the recording with growing horror. She had studied hundreds of different alien species, but this was something else entirely. These beings, if they could be called beings, seemed to exist outside the normal rules of reality. How many of them are there? She asked. Thousands, Thex replied. Maybe millions. They move in a great wave across the galaxy, following the hyperspace routes that connect all our worlds. And they are heading toward the center, toward all of us. The hall erupted in panic. Representatives began shouting in dozens of different languages. Some called for their fleets to be prepared for war. Others talked about hiding in distant galaxies. But as the hours passed, a pattern emerged. One by one, each species announced they were leaving. The Zephyrians said they would retreat to higher dimensions where the shadow beings could not follow. The Deepsworn declared they would return to their home oceans and sink to the deepest places where no light could find them. Even the proud Korathans spoke of fleeing to the small galaxies that orbited their own. As the great hall emptied, Lisa Hayes found herself standing alone at the speaker's podium. The representatives of 67 different species had all announced their retreat. Now only the human ambassador remained. And what of humanity? Asked the Zephyrian speaker, its light flickering like a candle in the wind. Will your species flee with the rest of us? Lisa looked around the empty hall. Thinking of Earth and all the human colonies spread across the galaxy, she thought of people like Jake Morrison and his crew, out there on the edge of space, standing watch while others ran away. She thought of the children playing in Earth's parks, and the farmers growing food on distant worlds, and all the ordinary, people who had never asked for this fight but would face it anyway. No, she said, her voice clear and strong. Humanity will not flee. We did not crawl out of Earth's gravity well and spread across the stars just to run when things get dangerous. We have faced extinction before and survived. We will face it. Again. The alien representative stared at her in amazement and fear. You do not understand, the Korathan said. These beings unmake reality itself. They cannot be fought with weapons or words. Maybe not, Lisa replied. But they can be resisted. They can be opposed. And sometimes, that is enough. As the great station emptied and the alien fleets departed for distant galaxies, Lisa Hayes broadcast a message to every human world and ship in the galaxy. Her words were simple but filled with determination that would echo through history. This is Ambassador Hayes to all human forces and colonies. The other species have chosen to flee from the threat approaching our galaxy. Humanity chooses differently. We choose to stand. We choose to fight. We choose to resist, no matter the cost. We are human, and humans do not run. Across the galaxy, on ships and stations and distant worlds, humans received the message. Some were afraid and some were angry, but none spoke of running away. They were human, and humans stood their ground. 6 months had passed since the great alien exodus began. The space lanes that once buzzed with trade ships from dozens of species now lay empty and silent. Only automated distress signals marked where entire civilizations once lived and worked. Humanity found itself alone in a galaxy that seemed too big and too quiet. Admiral Jack Sullivan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UCS Resolute, looking at star maps that showed the advancing enemy. Red markers indicated systems that had already fallen to the Devourers. 12 star systems had been consumed, leaving behind regions of space where nothing worked the way it should. Sir, we're getting reports from the scout ships, said Commander Amy Foster, who had been promoted after her good work on the Defiance. The enemy has taken the Centauri system. They're moving faster than we expected. Jack nodded grimly. He had been a middle-rank officer just months ago. Now he commanded all of humanity's space forces because everyone above him had either died or gone mad from what they had seen. How long until they reach the inner colonies? At this rate, maybe 3 months, Amy replied. But sir, the reports from Centauri are strange. The system is still there, but it's wrong. Gravity flows upward, the sun burns cold, and time moves in circles. Far from the fleet, Dr. Sam Rodriguez worked day and night in his research station, called Hawking's Dream. His team had been studying pieces of destroyed ships and strange matter left behind by the Devourers. What they found made Sam's hands shake as he wrote his reports. "They're not alive," Sam told his assistant as they looked at samples under powerful microscopes. "Not in any way we understand life. They're more like pieces of a broken universe, trying to fix themselves by eating ours." The samples glowed with sick light that hurt to look at. When they touched normal matter, the matter changed, becoming something that followed different rules of physics. Sam had lost 3 lab assistants who got too close to the samples. They didn't die exactly, but they became something else, something that existed partly in this universe and partly somewhere else. "Doctor, we're receiving a priority message from the colony of New Dakota," called his communications officer. Sam activated the message screen. Governor Pete Wilson appeared, a tough-looking man with calloused hands and determined eyes. Behind him, Sam could see colonists building walls and weapons from farming equipment. "Dr. Rodriguez, we've received evacuation orders, but we're not leaving," Pete said firmly. "My grandfather didn't cross an ocean to run from hardship, and I'm not crossing a galaxy to run either. We're going to fight these things, whatever they are." Sam felt both admiration and fear for the colonists. New Dakota was a farming world with only 50,000 people. They had no military ships, no advanced weapons, just the courage that seemed to live in every human heart. "Governor, you don't understand what you're facing," Sam replied. "These entities can change the laws of physics. Your weapons might not even work against them." Pete Wilson smiled grimly. "Then we'll make new weapons. We're humans, Doctor. We're good at that." On the front lines, Lieutenant Colonel Mary Thompson led the 1st Terran Marines through the ruins of the Vega system. Her soldiers moved carefully through space stations where the corridors bent in impossible directions and where their footsteps echoed before they took them. "Keep your reality anchors active," Mary told her squad over the radio. The reality anchors were small devices that Sam's team had developed. They helped keep the laws of physics working normally in small areas, but they used a lot of power and only worked for a few hours. One of her Marines, Sergeant Tom Baker, stopped at a viewport and called out, "Colonel, you need to see this." Mary joined him at the window. Outside, where the planet Vega Prime should have been, there was something that made her eyes water to look at. It looked like a planet, but it was inside out, with the core on the outside and the surface buried deep. Within, strange lights moved across its impossible surface. "The colonists?" Mary asked, though she already knew the answer. "Gone," Tom replied. "Not dead, just gone, like they never existed." Mary's Marines had been rescuing survivors from abandoned alien ships for months. Sometimes they found beings that had been changed by contact with the Devourers, creatures that remembered being someone else but could no longer explain what they had become. These survivors spoke of dreams filled with hungry darkness and of reality becoming unstable around them. Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Carter made a discovery that chilled her blood. She had been studying the patterns of the Devourer attacks, trying to understand why they chose certain systems over others. The answer was terrifying in its simplicity. "They're attracted to thinking minds," she explained to the emergency council meeting. "The more complex the thoughts, the stronger the attraction. That's why they hit populated worlds first. Consciousness itself acts as a beacon calling them." The implications were horrible. Every human thought, every dream and hope and fear was like a signal telling the Devourers where to find them. The smarter and more creative humanity became, the more attractive they were to these cosmic predators. Strange phenomena began occurring throughout human space. On the mining station Titan's Rest, Chief Engineer Rick Barnes reported that his computers were showing readings from systems that didn't exist. Elevators moved between floors that weren't there. Time flowed differently, in different parts of the station. "It's like reality is getting sick," Rick told his supervisor. "The Devourers don't even have to be here to affect us. Just knowing they exist is enough to make things go wrong." People across human colonies began reporting disturbing dreams. They saw a vast hungry darkness pressing against the edges of space, trying to break through into their universe. Some colonists claimed they could hear whispers in languages that had never existed, speaking of endings and consumption, and the final meal that would satisfy an eternal hunger. On the research vessel, Hawking's Dream, Sam's team detected massive energy readings from the direction of Earth's solar system. The readings showed that space itself was becoming unstable. Gravity wells were collapsing, hyperspace routes were closing, and the fundamental forces that held the universe together were starting to weaken. Captain Jake Morrison's ship, the Defiance, encountered its first Devourer scout vessel near the edge of the Orion sector. The engagement lasted only minutes, but taught humanity a terrifying lesson about their enemy. "Fire all weapons," Jake ordered as the shadow ship appeared on their screens. The Defiance's lasers and missiles passed through the enemy vessel like it was made of smoke. The Devourer ship didn't even seem to notice the attack. But when it fired, back Jake watched in horror as his ship's hull plating aged decades and seconds. Metal that had been shiny and new became rusty and cracked as if time itself was being used as a weapon. "Shields are failing," called Chief Engineer Rick Barnes from his station. "But sir, they're not being destroyed. They're getting old. Really, old. Like they've been in space for 1,000 years. Jake ordered a retreat, but even as they ran he realized something important. For just a moment when Rick had reversed the shield polarity, the enemy's time weapon had stopped working. There might be a way to fight these things after all. As the Defiance limped back to base, Jake broadcast a message to Admiral Sullivan. "Sir, we can hurt them. I don't know how yet, but we can fight back. We just need to figure out how to make them follow our rules instead of theirs." Across human space, the same message was being repeated on every world and ship and station. Despite the fear, despite the impossible enemy, despite being alone in a galaxy that was becoming more dangerous every day, humanity held firm to one simple truth. They would not run. They would not surrender. They would stand and resist, no matter what came against them. Because that was what humans did. They stood when others fell. They fought when others fled. And they never, ever gave up. The darkness was coming, but humanity would meet it with light in their hands and defiance in their hearts. Dr. Sam Rodriguez had not slept in 3 days. His eyes were red and his hands shook as he stared at the test results on his screen. But what he saw there made him forget all about being tired. After months of studying the strange matter left behind by the Devourers, his team had finally found something important. "It works," he whispered to himself, then shouted to his lab. "It actually works." His assistant, Dr. Kate Morgan, rushed over to look at the screen. "What works, Sam?" "The quantum stabilizer," Sam said, pointing at the readings. "Look at these numbers. When we create a field of stable quantum particles around the Devourer matter, it can't change the laws of physics anymore. It gets trapped in our reality." The breakthrough had come by accident. Sam had been trying to contain a sample of the alien matter when his equipment malfunctioned. Instead of failing completely, the quantum field generator had locked the matter into normal physics. For the first time, the Devourer sample behaved like regular matter instead of the reality-warping substance it had been. "We can build these on a bigger scale," Kate said, understanding immediately. "If we can create stable quantum fields around our ships and colonies, the Devourers won't be able to affect them." Sam nodded and opened a communication channel to Admiral Sullivan. "Admiral, we have something. We call it a reality anchor. It forces space around it to follow normal physics laws. The Devourers can't touch anything inside the field." Within hours, the first prototype reality anchor was being built on the farming world of New Dakota. Governor Pete Wilson had volunteered his colony to test the device, knowing that if it failed, his people would be the first to die. "We've faced droughts, storms, and crop failures," Pete told his colonists as they watched the strange machine being assembled in their central square. "This is just another challenge to overcome." The reality anchor looked like a metal tower covered in spinning rings and glowing crystals. When Sam's team activated it, the air around New Dakota shimmered for a moment. Then everything looked normal. Again. But the readings showed that space itself had become more solid, more real within a 100-mile radius of the device. Commander Amy Foster led the desperate mission to install reality anchors throughout the Sol system. Her engineering teams worked in conditions that would have been impossible just months before. Near the edge of the system, where the Devourer influence was strongest, reality had become unreliable. "Watch your step, everyone," Amy warned her team as they worked on installing an anchor on an asteroid. "Gravity is pointing sideways here and time keeps skipping backward." One of her engineers, Lieutenant Ben Curtis, stepped through what looked like empty space and found himself standing on the asteroid's ceiling. Another engineer, Sergeant Lisa Park, watched her tools age rapidly in her hands, then suddenly become new again as time flowed in reverse. "This is insane," Ben muttered as he tried to weld two pieces of metal together that kept becoming unwelded before he started. "Insane is what we do best," Amy replied with a grim smile. "Keep working. Earth depends on us." Dr. Helen Carter made another disturbing discovery while studying the testimonies of refugees from the fled alien species. Hidden in their panicked messages were clues about something they had been protecting, something at the center of the galaxy that the Devourers were trying to reach. They weren't just running away, Helen explained to the Emergency Council. They were keeping a secret. All these species, for millions of years, they've been guarding something at the galactic core, something that the Devourers want more than anything else. The ancient records spoke of a first gateway, hidden beneath layers of normal spacetime at the galaxy's center. The alien species had been programmed by their ancestors to flee if the gateway was ever threatened, ensuring that no one would be around to accidentally help the enemies reach it. "But what is it?" asked Admiral Sullivan during the briefing. "I think it's a door," Helen replied. "A door between our universe and theirs. The Devourers aren't invading from outside our reality. They're trying to get home, and their home is connected to ours through that gateway." On the mining world of Titan's Rest, Chief Engineer Rick Barnes discovered something that would change the war. While converting mining explosives into weapons, he noticed that regular bombs, when exploded inside a reality anchor field, created shockwaves that could actually damage Devourer ships. "It's not the explosion itself," Rick explained to his team of volunteers. "It's forcing the explosion to follow our physics so strictly that the Devourers can't ignore it. We're making reality so rigid that they have to be part of it." Rick called these new weapons physics bombs. They didn't destroy matter like normal explosives. Instead, they forced everything around them to obey the laws of reality so completely that entities from other universes couldn't exist in the blast area. The human fleet, now reduced to fewer than 300 ships, began preparing for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Admiral Sullivan's plan was desperate but simple. Turn the entire asteroid belt around Earth into one massive reality anchor. If it worked, they could create a wall in space that the Devourers couldn't cross. "We're going to make the solar system into a fortress," Sullivan explained to his captains. "Not with walls of steel, but with walls of reality itself." The plan required enormous amounts of power and dozens of reality anchors working together. Every human colony contributed what they could. The farming world sent food and volunteers. The mining colonies provided raw materials. The research stations shared their knowledge and equipment. Dr. Rodriguez made one final, terrifying discovery while preparing for the big battle. The quantum signatures he had been tracking showed that the Devourers weren't just consuming their universe. They were trying to remake it, turning the Milky Way into a place where their physics worked and normal physics didn't. If they succeed, Sam told the Emergency Council, our universe will become like theirs, a place where they are gods and we are impossible. Every star, every planet, every living thing will be transformed into something that follows their rules instead of ours. Across human space, ordinary people prepared to do extraordinary things. On Green Valley, farmers used their crop-dusting aircraft to spread reality anchor seeds in the upper atmosphere, creating a protective layer around their world. In the asteroid mining belt, workers welded together defensive networks using nothing but industrial tools and determination. On Earth, children drew pictures of stars and planets, pinning them to school bulletin boards, as if their innocent belief in a bright future could hold back the darkness. Adults worked around the clock in factories, building more reality anchors and physics bombs, knowing that each device might mean the difference between survival and extinction. Captain Jake Morrison's crew discovered they could create temporary reality anchors using their ship's quantum computer, but the process was dangerous. Someone had to manually control the quantum field, and the radiation would kill them within hours. Chief Engineer Rick Barnes volunteered without hesitation. "Someone has to hold the line," he said simply. Might as well be an old engineer who's seen enough sunsets. As Rick began the process of turning the Defiance into a mobile reality anchor, Jake felt a strange sense of hope. They were outnumbered by millions to one. They faced an enemy that could rewrite the laws of physics at will. They were alone in a galaxy where every other intelligent species had fled in terror. But they were human. And humans had always specialized in doing impossible things when their backs were against the wall. The Devourers were coming. Their massive fleet darkened the space between stars as they approached Earth's solar system. Reality rippled and warped around their ships like heat, waves rising from hot pavement. But humanity was ready. They had their reality anchors and their physics bombs. They had their courage and their refusal to surrender. Most importantly, they had each other. The final battle was about to begin, and humanity would meet it the way they met everything else that tried to destroy them. They would stand together, fight together, and if necessary, die together. But they would never, ever run away. The Devourer fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like a storm made of darkness and hunger. Thousands of shadow ships moved through space, their forms shifting and changing as they traveled. Where they passed, stars flickered and went out. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around them. Admiral Jack Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UCS Resolute, watching the enemy approach on his screens. The human fleet, barely 200 ships now, was positioned between the Devourers and Earth. Every ship was armed with physics bombs and powered by makeshift reality anchors that flickered and sparked with dangerous energy. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," he spoke into his communicator. "Today we fight not just for Earth but for the right of our universe to exist. Remember, we don't need to win. We just need to hold them long enough for the reality anchor network to reach full power." On the surface of Earth, people crowded into underground shelters as reality storms swept across the planet. The sky turned strange colors, and gravity pulled in different directions. Some areas experienced time loops where the same minute repeated over and over. Commander Amy Foster led a squadron of fighter ships toward the advancing enemy fleet. Her pilots were young and scared, but they flew anyway because someone had to try. The space around them became increasingly dangerous as the Devourer influence spread. "Remember your training," Amy told her pilots over the radio. "Don't try to fight them in normal space. Wait until you're inside a reality anchor field, then hit them with everything you have." The first phase of the battle was unlike anything in human history. Devourer ships phased through human vessels like ghosts, aging the metal hulls and crew while remaining untouchable. Human weapons passed through enemy craft without effect. Only when the physics bombs exploded inside reality anchor fields could the humans force their enemies into normal space where they could be hurt. Lieutenant Ben Curtis piloted his fighter through a region where time flowed backward. He watched his missiles fly away from enemy ships before he fired them. His radio crackled with voices from conversations that hadn't happened yet. But he kept flying, kept fighting because giving up was not an option. On the mining world of Titan's Rest, Chief Engineer Rick Barnes and his team of volunteers began the most dangerous job in human history. They had to manually control the ERE, quantum fields that powered the belt-wide reality anchor network. The radiation from the process would kill them, but without their sacrifice, the network would fail. "Just like fixing a busted mining rig," Rick said to his team as they took their positions at the control stations. "Except this time, we're fixing reality itself." As Rick placed his hands on the quantum regulators, he felt the exotic radiation begin to burn through his body. His skin started to fade as temporal displacement took hold. But he kept working, adjusting the controls with the precision that came from 30 years of engineering experience. "Power levels stable," reported his assistant Sarah Kim, as her own hands began to show the effects of the deadly radiation. "The network is responding." Dr. Helen Carter, working from her research station near the battle zone, made the discovery that would change everything. The Devourers weren't just trying to consume the galaxy. They were trying to reach the supermassive black hole at its center, which she now realized wasn't a black hole at all. "It's a gateway," she told Admiral Sullivan over an emergency channel. "The thing at the galactic core is a door between our universe and theirs. They're not invading. They're trying to go home." The revelation hit Sullivan like a physical blow. "Then why are they destroying everything?" "Because their universe is dying," Helen replied. "They're trying to merge the two realities to save what's left of their world. But if they succeed, both universes will be destroyed." As the reality anchor network began to reach full power, something unexpected happened. The Devourer ship started to become solid, their shadow forms taking on physical substance. For the first time, human weapons could hit them without needing special conditions. But the enemies adapted quickly. No longer untouchable ghosts, they became aggressive physical beings with weapons that turned matter into energy and energy into impossible geometries. The battle became more conventional but far more deadly. Captain Jake Morrison, his body already failing from radiation exposure, led a desperate charge toward the largest Devourer construct. It was a massive ship that seemed to be their command. Vessel, a twisted cathedral of dark matter that hurt to look at directly. "This is it," Jake told his crew over the ship's intercom. "We're going to ram that thing and detonate every physics bomb we have. It's been an honor serving with you all." Chief Engineer Rick Barnes, his form now translucent from temporal radiation, looked up from his control station. "Captain, I can increase the reality anchor's power one more time, but someone needs to manually regulate the quantum field and the radiation will kill them instantly." Jake didn't hesitate. "I'll do it." "Sir, you're needed on the bridge," Ricky protested. "The bridge can run itself for a few minutes," Jake replied. "Besides, I'm already dying from the radiation anyway. Might as well make it count." As Jake took Rick's position at the quantum regulator, the old engineer gave him a tired smile. "Just remember, Captain, don't let the field collapse, no matter what happens to you." The reality anchor network reached full power just as the Devourer fleet entered Earth's orbit. The effect was immediate and devastating. Thousands of enemy ships suddenly found themselves locked into normal physics, their exotic matter forms solidifying into targets that human weapons could destroy. The space around Earth became a battlefield of impossible beauty and terror. Ships exploded in flowers of light that followed the normal laws of physics. Devourer vessels, no longer able to phase through attacks, fired back with weapons that aged their targets or turned matter into mathematical concepts. Amy Foster's fighter squadron dove through the chaos, their reality anchor generators allowing them to create small zones of stable physics around their ships. They struck at enemy vessels like mosquitoes attacking giants, but each successful hit proved that the Devourers could be beaten. But victory came at a terrible price. The reality anchor network was burning out quantum computers across human space. Without the computers to regulate the fields, the anchors would fail within hours. Earth would be defenseless and the Devourers would be free to continue their march toward the galactic core. Jake Morrison felt his body beginning to dissolve as the quantum radiation tore him apart on a molecular level, but he kept his hands steady on the controls, maintaining the field that protected Earth and its billions of people. "Power levels critical," reported Dr. Rodriguez from his research station. "The network is failing faster than expected. We have maybe 30 minutes before total collapse." Admiral Sullivan looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of Devourer ships still approaching Earth. Even with their recent victories, humanity was still vastly outnumbered. The reality anchor network had given them a chance, but it wasn't enough. "All ships," Sullivan ordered, "prepare for final phase. We're going to ram as many enemy vessels as we can before the anchors fail. Make every death count." Across the human fleet, crews prepared for the ultimate sacrifice. They armed their physics bombs, aimed their ships at enemy vessels, and said goodbye to their families over long-range communicators. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. But they were human, and humans had never learned how to surrender. They would fight until the last ship was destroyed, the last anchor failed, and the last human drew breath. The battle for Earth's survival was reaching its climax, and humanity would meet their fate the way they had met every other challenge in their history. Together, defiant, and absolutely refusing to give up. Captain Jake Morrison felt his body dissolving as the quantum radiation ate through him cell by cell. His hands had become translucent, and he could see the control panel through his fading fingers. But he held steady, keeping the reality anchor, field stable while the battle raged around Earth. Dr. Sam Rodriguez spoke urgently over the communication system from his research station. "Captain Morrison, we have one last option. We can reverse the polarity of the galactic core gateway. Instead of sealing it, we destabilize both universes at their connection point. It will either save both realities or destroy them completely." Jake's voice was weak but determined. "What are the chances it will work?" "I don't know," Sam admitted. "Maybe 50-50. But if we do nothing, both universes die anyway when the Devourers reach the core." Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled over the radio from the Resolute. "Someone needs to carry a quantum device directly to the galactic center. It's a one-way trip through the most dangerous space in the galaxy." Jake looked around the bridge of the Defiance. His ship was falling apart, held together more by hope than metal. His crew was gone, killed in the fighting or evacuated to safer vessels. He was alone with a ship that was barely flying and a body that was barely alive. "I'll do it," Jake said simply. "The Defiance and I are both dying anyway. Might as well make it count for something." Within an hour, the battered patrol ship was loaded with humanity's most powerful reality anchor and every physics bomb they could fit into the cargo bay. As Jake prepared to leave for the galaxy's heart, he recorded a final message that would be found years later by the returning alien species. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Fleet. If anyone finds this recording, know that we stood when others fell, and we never stopped fighting. We are human, and that means something." The journey to the galactic core took Jake through regions of space where the Devourers had completely unraveled reality. He saw stars that burned with cold, light and planets that existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. In one system, he encountered the ghost images of fleeing alien ships, trapped in endless time loops as they tried to escape. The Zephyrian fleet appeared on his sensors, their light ships flickering like dying candles. They had been caught in a temporal storm and were reliving the same moment of terror over and over again. Jake couldn't help them, but he broadcast a message telling them that humanity remembered their friendship. "We forgive you for running," he said to the trapped aliens. "Fear is natural, courage is a choice." Meanwhile, back at Earth, something unexpected was happening. The Devourer ships in orbit were becoming more solid with each passing hour. "Doctor." Helen Carter realized that the reality anchor network wasn't just forcing them into normal physics. It was making them more real, more alive, more like the beings they had been before their universe started dying. Through her translation equipment, she began to hear voices from the enemy ships. They weren't speaking words of conquest or destruction. They were crying for help. "Please," came a voice that sounded ancient and tired. "We do not wish to destroy. We are lost. Our home is ending, and we cannot find our way back." Helen activated the communication system and spoke to the Devourer fleet. "We can hear you. What do you need?" "The gateway," the voice replied. "We must reach the gateway at the galaxy's heart. Our universe bleeds into yours through the wound. If we cannot seal it from our side, both realities will die." Admiral Sullivan listened to the conversation with growing understanding. "They're not invaders. They're refugees trying to save their universe and ours. But the revelation came too late. The reality anchor network was failing, and without it, the communication would be lost. The Devourers would return to their shadow forms, and the cycle of destruction would continue." At the galactic core, Jake Morrison discovered the truth about the gateway. The massive black hole was actually a wound in space-time, a place where the boundaries between universes had been torn. Ancient machines built by a civilization that existed before either universe was young had been trying to repair the damage for millions of years. The machines were failing. The gateway was growing larger, and the exotic energy bleeding through was what attracted the Devourers. They weren't trying to invade. They were being pulled through against their will as their universe collapsed into this one. Jake's ship, now more wreckage than vessel, approached the ancient machinery. He could see that one final repair was possible, but it would require someone to become a living bridge between the universes, channeling the energy needed to weld the realities back together. "Sam, can you hear me?" Jake called over the radio, though he knew the signal probably couldn't reach that far. Surprisingly, Sam's voice came back clear and strong. "We're here, Jake. The whole galaxy is listening." "I'm going to fix this," Jake said. "Tell everyone that humans keep their promises. We said we'd stand and resist, and we did." Jake guided his ship into the heart of the ancient machinery. As the Defiance merged with technology older than stars, Jake felt his consciousness expand across both universes. He could see the dying reality where the Devourers came from, a place where physics had broken down and entire galaxies were collapsing into nothing. Using his will as a bridge, Jake channeled the energy needed to repair the gateway. The process was agony beyond description, but he held on, pouring his life force into the ancient machines. Slowly, the wound between universes began to heal. The effect was immediate and galaxy-wide. The Devourer ships throughout the Milky Way began to phase back into their own reality, their forms becoming translucent as the repaired gateway pulled them home. But instead of being consumed by their dying universe, they found it stabilized by the energy Jake was channeling through the barrier. Both realities survived, forever separated but no longer dying. On Earth, the humans watched in wonder as the enemy fleet faded away like morning mist. The reality storm stopped. Time began flowing normally again. The stars shone with their proper light. Admiral Sullivan received reports from across human space. The colonies were safe. The mining stations were secure. The farming worlds were already planning next year's crops. Humanity had not just survived. They had saved 2 entire universes. Ambassador Lisa Hayes, scarred and aged by the reality storms but still strong, stood before the great council chamber as the alien species began to return. The Zephyrians flickered back into existence, freed from their time loops. The Corathans arrived with their scales bright with renewed courage. Even the Deepsworn surfaced from their deep oceans to rejoin the galaxy. "Welcome back," Lisa said, "to the returning species. We kept your seats warm." The alien representatives stared at the humans with awe and something approaching worship. They had fled from the ultimate threat, but humanity had faced it and won. "How?" asked the Zephyrian speaker. "How did you succeed where we failed?" Lisa smiled, thinking of Jake Morrison and Rick Barnes and all the other humans who had given everything to save not just their own species, but everyone. "We stood our ground. We fought for what was right, and we never gave up hope, even when hope seemed impossible." Years later, a monument was built on Earth in memory of all who died in the war. At the top of the list was Captain Jake Morrison's name, with an inscription that captured the essence of humanity's greatest moment. When the universe itself turned against us, we turned back and said, "No, we are the species that stands when others fall, that fights when others flee, that hopes when others despair. We are human, and that is enough." The galaxy was safe. Both universes continued to exist. And somewhere in the space between realities, Jake Morrison's sacrifice ensured that the gateway would remain sealed, protecting countless worlds and countless species for all time to come. Humanity had proven something important that day. When every other species fled, they stood and resisted. And in the end, that made all the difference.